So, the 5 W's you're all familiar with, I'm sure, and the H. I take it back to the graphic organizer of the hand, and you can see that back there on the wall next to the exit sign. Each one of the fingers is a W, and then the how is in the center. And here's my silly little song that you can get students to turn into a rap. Question before I...
This would be for fiction or nonfiction?
Fiction or nonfiction, and it might be the main who is not always a person. It might be an event. Okay?
Yes.
That makes sense. Do you want to add something?
Yes, what I teach my students is the who. The who is always going to be a noun, and the what is always going to be a verb. Because it gets complicated sometimes. For example, if you read an article about Twitter or about pollution, they automatically want to jump to there's got to be a person in there somewhere. So I always teach the main who will always be a noun. It's the main noun, the main person, place, or thing that the entire article or passage or song or picture is about. And then what about that noun? Give me a verb.
And so you said the what would be, repeat that again, tell me.
The what is going to be a verb. So it's going to be what about that noun. For example, you read the article about O.J. Simpson. The entire article, the main who of that article was O.J. Simpson. What about O.J. Simpson? If you had to give me a sentence, what verb would you put after O.J. Simpson?
So you're saying the main idea essentially will typically be a noun.
The main who will be a noun, and the main what will be a verb. So what was the verb?
Please, for less time or something.
Please for less time. Okay, so O.J. Simpson, main who, what? Please for less time. Could we even put another version of that verb there?
Begs.
Begs, yeah. I mean, there's a few different ways you can do it, and that's another thing that I try to tell my students. When you have the main idea, the main who should be pretty similar. The what is going to be, it could be a little bit different. You may put a different verb there, but it's always going to be centered around the same idea. And a lot of times students will tell you, well, the main idea is, okay. Yes, we do have a poster of the formula in the very back. We set it up like a nice little math equation because students love math. We've got the main who plus the main what will equal the main idea. And when my students practice with this in the very beginning, I make them set it up like this. I tell them, what is the main who? What is the main what? I don't just let them throw something out to me. They have to set it up like that. And then they can turn that into a sentence. I start this even with my honors level seniors. I start very slow in the beginning. I work in all of these foundations, and the rest of the year will go by a lot faster. It's important to set all of those foundations down. I know a lot of teachers say, well, I don't have that much time. If you don't set this stuff and teach it, explicitly teach it and get it down in the beginning, you're going to be wasting more time later on. So the way I look at it, go ahead and teach it in the very beginning so that later on when you're doing more complicated tasks, they're able to do them. Do you have any questions?
All right, very quickly, what we're going to do is we're going to practice using a text to do the same thing, to come up with 5 W's and an H, and then use those 2 W's, the who and the what, to come up with our main idea. So I believe you guys already have it out. If you pull back your Crucible text, we're actually going to read this together very quickly. And I'm going to read it to you just for the sake of time, that we don't all have to take parts and things of that nature. But after I have read it to you, I'm then going to ask you guys to all give me one of the W's, which everybody will be able to participate with that, and then we'll figure out the main idea of this passage. And here's just one thing to address to you guys, is obviously the main idea of the Crucible is not necessarily going to match the main idea of this passage. So it depends on how you want to use it. If you're reading the whole thing, then obviously you're going to look at the whole thing. For this, we're just looking at this passage, and it may not necessarily represent the entire main idea of the text. But very quickly, we have John Proctor who says, "You are the high court, your word is good enough. Tell them I confessed myself, and say Proctor broke his knees and wept like a woman. Say what you will, but my name cannot." And Danforth with suspicion says, "It is the same, is it not, if I report or if you sign it?" And Proctor, knowing that it is insane, says, "No, it is not the same. What others say and what I sign is not the same." And Danforth continues to question with, "Why? Do you mean to deny this confession when you are free?" And Proctor says, "I mean to deny nothing." And Danforth continues on and says, "Then explain to me, Mr. Proctor, why you will not let..." And Proctor, with a cry of his whole soul, says, "Because it is my name, because I cannot have another in my life, because I lie and sign myself to lies, because I am worth the dust on the feet of them that hang. How many I live without my name, I have given you my soul, leave me my name." And Danforth, pointing at the confession in Proctor's hand, says, "Is that document a lie? If it is a lie, I will not accept it. What say you? I will not deal in lies, mister." And Proctor is motionless at this. "You will give your honest confession in my hand, or I cannot keep you from the rope." And Proctor does not reply, and Danforth continues, "Which way do you go, mister?" His breast heaving, his eyes staring, Proctor tears the paper and crumples it, and he is weeping in fury but erect. And Danforth screams for the marshal, "Marshal!" And Paris, hysterically as though the tearing paper were his life, screams, "Proctor, Proctor!" And Hale continues with, "Man, you will hang, you cannot." And I will finish with just this part right here. And Proctor, his eyes full of tears, says, "I can, and there's your first marvel, that I can. You have made your magic now, for now I do think I see some shred of goodness in John Proctor. Not enough to weave a banner, but with white enough to keep it from such dogs." And Elizabeth, in a burst of terror, rushes to him and weeps against his hand. "Give them no tear. Tears pleasure them. Show honor now and show a stony heart and sink them with it." And as he lifts her, he kisses her now with great passion. And so the first thing, and hopefully obviously y'all were reading with me as well, but the first thing that I would want to ask you guys is, who is the main who within this text right now? With what? Not the entire crucible, but just this passage of text. Who is our main who? Who has the conflict? Who would like to tell me who the main who is here?
I'd say Proctor.
John Proctor. John Proctor is our main who. Now, whether or not you use the big hand or you just write out the W's, you would want to write that W out. The main who is John Proctor. Now, tell me, what is John Proctor's what? Which, as Ms. Rodriguez said, is his verb. What is going on with John Proctor? What is it that he is doing right now in this passage? He's confessing. Sort of. Explain to me, Mr. Sweeney.
He confesses, but he realizes that if he confesses, it ruins the person that he wants to be. Because, as Danforth says, "I will not deal in lies." He's been dealing in lies the entire play, and we know this, but in this passage, John Proctor's confession will be a lie.
Right.
But if he lies, he keeps his life and keeps his name, and if he tells the truth, he hangs.
If he tells the truth, he's going to hang, but his pure will be sold. And so obviously there is a conflict and a contradiction here. But that is our main what? He is debating whether or not he should truly confess. And so right off the bat, we're going to go ahead and do the other three W's, but we can already come up with our main idea of this text. Very quickly, can somebody tell me what the when is in this situation? And you might use your inferencing skills to understand what it is, because it may not necessarily say in the passage. So what is the when? Use your prior knowledge from earlier today when we talked during the Salem witch trials, late 1600s, late 17th century. So that would be our when. And again, and you also gave us our where as well, so we know that we are in Salem, Massachusetts. And then we have our who, what, when, where, why, and how. So why, what can we assume is the why here? Why is this happening? Why is this going on? Why is this important? Yes, sir. I see it thinking. It's coming. You gave me a sign and I took it.
I just take a deep breath.
Okay.
But I'm thinking The why is for purification
Exactly.
purposes, because these are people who left England because of what they or deemed to be unfair
Right.
religious practices. So they want to be among those who are pure.
And definitely within this select passage, that is a perfect answer. If we got more into the crucible, we might say some different things. For this passage, that's a great answer. That's the information that we're given right there, is that they're definitely trying to judge the impurities and purities of a person. Now, obviously, if we wanted to really get deep into it, we know that the people that are making the accusations of this crime are actually the ones that are actually impure here. But from what we have from the text, that was a perfect answer. And so now that we have our 5 W's, let's go ahead and go back to the first 2 that we did, and those are always the most important. That gives us our main idea. Somebody give me the who plus the what. Now I'm going to go to the back table. All right. No, I'm not. I'm not going to go to the back table. Mr. Swirling, will you give us the who plus the what together?
John Proctor is debating whether or not to confess to witchcraft.
And that's it. And that is our main idea of the passage. So, again, this is something, as Ms. Park said earlier, that we're all good readers, more than likely, and that these are things we do naturally. And that's why this workshop is important, because all the strategies we're going over are things that we might just do naturally and that we can just pick up on. And we don't even realize that we're doing it. And so we have to start breaking these things down to show the things that we do naturally, that we're doing subconsciously without realizing it, to where we can actually show the students how to do it. So very simple, but that's the point, is that we want the students to find it simple to where they can do this all the time. All right, very good, guys.
Okay, and I'll just wrap up because I promised you I was going to sing the little annoying song. So the 5W song, it'll be stuck in your head for the whole weekend. You'll be not happy with me. But it goes, got the who, what, where, when, why, and how. I've got the who, what, where, when, why, and how. I've got the who, what, where, when, why, and how. Got the main idea in my hand. And so you can let students make up a rap or make up whatever song, tune that they want to, but it gets stuck in their head, and then they can use that not only to find the main idea, but to summarize, because if you take all those things and put them together, you're coming up with a summary of what the text is. All right? So again, that can be a very simple graphic organizer. Have them lay their hand on the paper and draw around it. This is your who, this is your what, this is your why, when, how, okay? And so that graphic organizer we've used a lot with main idea. The table graphic organizer is in your supplemental materials, but it's also back there behind Amy on the wall, where the top of the table is the main who, so they have to put the main who and the main what on the table top, and then the legs are the supporting details. And, you know, if a table only has 3 legs, it's going to fall over. So you've got to make sure you've got all the supporting details that back up your main idea. And that's going into the summarizing. And the other one we use a lot is the fishbone, and it's in your graphic organizers too, where the main idea goes down the spine of the fish, and then the supporting details are on the, whatever you would call it, supporting the spine. All right, questions about any of that? All in your supplemental materials, and again, if you forget any of this, it's going to be on that PowerPoint that will be on your flash drive too, that you can go back and revisit. All right.